Hi, my name is Nelson Hill. I play Jordan. I'm also the director. So this short is about a young man named Samuel, and Samuel wants to make more money. He's broke. He has very little money in the bank account. He's working construction, and he's kind of fed up with life. And so he turns to his friend, Jordan. And Jordan, they're best friends. And Jordan is not the most ethical human being in the world. He deals drugs. He murders people. He works for this big mobster named Oswaldo. Oswaldo has him do all this horrible stuff. And Samuel starts to follow in Jordan's footsteps because Samuel wants more money, and that's why he does this. And we start to realize that Samuel, this stuff isn't sitting right with Samuel, Stealing, sure, that might be okay, but murdering someone, that's like a whole new level that you really can't come back from, And so Samuel then he comes to a dilemma. His conscience kicks in, and he has to make a choice to either walk away from this or become a cold-hearted gangster and probably die within the next few years because, hey, that's life. This short was fun. This was probably the longest one I've done so far. It's almost like a pilot. Clocked in at 30 minutes or 32 minutes. It was great. It was perfect. Zara was amazing. She was great. She was so sweet when she showed up to set. I mean, she looked perfect. She was great. She really brought a lot of energy. It took a little bit for her to get there. I know she's a dancer, so I knew she would be comfortable in that setting and playing a character like that, even though she's never done that in her life. But I really trusted her, and I was glad I did because, she really brought it. She really, really had the guts to take on this role and to tackle this whole scene. The makeout scene we had, that was, I mean, she's a great actress. We both really portrayed like it was the real deal, and she had no problem. I had no problem. It was very safe. It was a really, really, very safe environment for her and for me and for the people there. All those car scenes, the car scenes that we shoot, they're in the car. We're really driving. We had to. The lighting, we had to set it all up, and it was fun. It was really cool. And she did phenomenal. Zara was impeccable. She really was. That fight scene was tough. That 5-man, well, it was supposed to be 6 men, and you just got to really look into it. But that fight scene was a little nerve-wracking because I had to get like 7 or 8 people there total to all be free at the same time and everything. And I knew they were all going to show up. I had a couple of people flake. I had to recast some people, but that fight scene, Chasten really did amazing. While there's no audio, so we were just playing like, XXX, Tentacion, Kanye, Drake, Meek Mill. We were playing, a ton of rap songs to get Chasten going, and he really took it. Chasten, every take, he was going 100 miles an hour. They were breathing because it was so hot. They all had pants on, and they were all wearing black, and so it was a fun setting. It was cool grabbing the camera myself and doing a ton of movements. I felt like Zack Snyder, but yeah, that was great. When the robbery scene, I hit James, I think like 6 times or 5 times. I felt so bad. It was I wasn't pulling my punches enough, and he suffered for it. But the next day, he drank an old fashioned, and I think he works really hard. I put him in the next short, so it all kind of evened out. It all did. Bella, so for people that don't know, casting her in this was really cool and really fun. That was her first time making out on camera. And she was so sweet. She was like so cute the whole time. It was awkward. What they don't everybody tells you, oh yeah, it's awkward. They don't tell you what's awkward about it. Sometimes they do. What's really, really awkward, in my opinion, is the sound, because it's so quiet and all you hear, I'm not going to do it, but all you hear is making out sound. And that is just awkward. It's not the fact that it's awkward with the person. It might be, but it's more awkward that there's just no noise except kissing. But Bella was perfect. My favorite scene is when she jumped in my arms. That was like amazing. That was awesome. Yeah, I hadn't seen her. It felt like 2 or 3. Yeah, I think I didn't see her that day or for 2 days. So that, like, hunger, and she's so great. She's good at real improv. I told her what the scene was, and she came and jumped in my arms. We did like 4 takes, and every single one she jumped in my arms at running 100 miles an hour, and it was awesome. She's so beautiful. She's so pretty, and I love everything about her. And she was great. That garage scene in and of itself was really good. Who brought it? Austin. Austin was killer. Even though he didn't have a lot of lines, I think he had like 2 or 1. The intensity, the timidness that he showed was just impeccable. It really elevated the scene, and he did a great job. Oscar, that was the first time meeting Oscar. He's the guy that Chasten decked in the face, and he did great. The fall, the blood, he was perfect, and that whole scene really was a true treasure. The whole demeanor. I watched Heat, so from the demeanor from the first robbery scene to the demeanor to us in the garage is completely different, and I got that from Heat, from Al Pacino. Al Pacino, there are some things that he does in Heat that he amplifies, but then there are some scenes where he's completely calm and he's completely in control. So that's one thing, as an actor, that really helped, just watching different performances from Al Pacino. Yeah. The voicemail scene was really cool. That whole scene wasn't planned. Chasten recommended, he's like, hey, there needs to be a scene that ties from the car scene with me and you where we have an argument to seeing Bella and to Faith, or to Abby seeing Samuel. There needs to be a scene in there, because originally it was just that scene, me and Chasten in the car arguing, me trying to tell him that it's okay to do all this stuff, and then it cuts to the scene where we see each other. So he was like, there just needs to be a scene in there. I was like, all right, yeah, there could be a gas station scene. Maybe he calls Katie and tells her everything, tell her, hey, can you bring, Abby with you? Bella, her voice was impeccable. We had filmed that in the morning. I want to say like 11 a.m. So her voice had like this cute, nasal voice. It almost sounded like she was sick, and it sounded so real. We filmed it on my phone, on my iPhone. We filmed it right in front of the editing screen. And it just goes to show that you don't need $20 million equipment to get it on a screen. You can easily film easy voiceover scenes like that on your phone. Even Foley stuff, cracks or stuff like that. The whole gun thing coming with the brass knuckle in the gun. That was all. That was all. I did that Foley. The counting money was all Foley on my phone. So yeah, but Bella's voice was incredible, and I love that she was down to reshoot that part. Yeah. Oh, so me and Chasten's scene where we argued, that was a lot of fun. It was cool. The coloring was amazing. Coloring was fantastic. It looked like something out of Manchester by the Sea. I think I used the Dunkirk LUT that Christopher Nolan uses. So it was amazing. And Chasten really brought it. He really did. It took him a little bit to get there, but I mean, what actor that doesn't, that happens all the time. But what I liked was, I think I used take 5. I used the last take, and it really, really showed how well he was able to adapt with each one, because each one got better. If we did 40, I would have used the 40th one, because each one was getting better and better and better. And it was cool writing that scene, because that whole scene is Samuel honestly standing up for himself. It really is. There is no other scene, unless the last scene, yeah, of course, the last scene where Samuel decks Jordan. But this scene in particular is I really want to show Samuel standing up for himself. So I told Chasten, I was like, dude, this is like it. Bring it. You've had enough of my stuff. Like, this is over the top. Like, you're ready to leave. And then the whole scene transitions where you realize kind of how manipulative Jordan is, and I like that Chasten brought different levels to the whole thing, where he's yelling, And then the next scene, he was able to tone it down, but he wasn't just able to like, turn off and stare at me. It was like, because that's not how people, that's not how you argue. When you tone down when you argue to listen to someone else, it's a gradual thing. And that's one thing he portrayed really, really well. And yeah, that was a cool scene. That was fun. Cutting on Sound of Action, I think is the name. The first time I did that was with the gun clip. It's a and then I cut to Sammy's close up. This is in the car before we hit up Jose and Carlos. That was like a new type of skill thing that I found that I thought would be really cool. That whole thing, I got off of Artlist, that whole sound. And then I started watching other movies and I started realizing that, oh, wow, there are some things where, they cut on the Sound of Action. And so that was a really cool like discovery that I have. That was probably the biggest discovery that I had, or one of this whole short. Leaf's my boy. Leaf is awesome. Leaf is the last time I saw him, I was doing BTS for a short that he was directing. And Leaf was the bad guy in The Amazing Spider-Man. He was Uncle Ben's killer. And I didn't realize that until we were about to start shooting our scene and we were talking. And we were talking about the business, and I looked at him and I was like, was there a time that you got close to, doing something big? And we were talking about that. And he was like, yeah, I was Uncle Ben's killer in The Amazing Spider-Man. And I was like, what, like the whole, like he told me that right before we started shooting, and I kind of flipped out a little bit. But that was cool. He's a great actor. That was my third time seeing him, and I've known him over the course of 6 months. So it's really cool keeping these connections, keeping these phone numbers, hitting people up when you can. And he brought it. He really did, the whole, are you alone? And him and Chasten were really good. He took direction really well. I told him how I wanted him to hold Clay, Aiden. And he took direction well. He had the tattoos, he had the hair. He was a great actor, and he really brought it. I met Clay doing background for a movie called Replica, starring Jeremy Luke. That happened 2 years ago. I then see Clay at a hotel that he was dropping food off to. I was working at the hotel. He was dropping food off to the hotel. I ran into him 6 months after we were on set with Replica. And then a year and a half after that, I hit him up. I'm like, hey, I remembered you, remember hitting you up. He's like, hey man, what's up? Yeah, I remember you at the hotel. How you been? I need this actor for this role. You got a great look. He's got that, what's that dude's name? Jeremy Allen White. He looks just like him a little bit. That was my third time seeing Clay. And so again, it's keep these people in your contacts, keep following them on Instagram, because you'll never know when, you might need them for a short. But he was like, every take, the yelling, he brought it. Every single one. Like his voice was done, and he still kept going. He would have still kept going. He was just amazing. He told me he could yell. I was like, hey man, so just so you know, this is a high intensity scene. Like, can you yell? He was like, oh dude, no problem. I've heard that before, and then show up to set and it's trash. But nah, first take in, he's yelling and he's going at it. Him, Leaf, Chasten, they're all just. I told him the only direction I gave is like, this is chaotic. Talk over each other. Do that. And that's what they did. And yeah, Clay was amazing. He was I'm definitely going to use him again. He was perfect. The scene with Faith and Chasten yelling at each other, I wanted it to be both of them going at it. But I didn't want to paint Samuel as this bad person. So I was like, so don't say, you cheated on. I didn't want him to cheat. I didn't want him to physically abuse her. I just wanted it to be a petty thing that they broke up with. And like some actors, Chasten couldn't, at that time, there was a lot going on that day in particular, and he just wasn't getting there as an actor. And I gave him, stuff like that happens, it's, nobody's perfect. But luckily, Faith took initiative, and she was like, all right, okay, you know what? So she starts yelling. And so in the middle of this scene, we was kind of doing a therapy session. I was going back and forth. I was like, well, Samuel, like, she thinks one way. Yeah, Abby, he's thinking this way. Doesn't that make you mad? And I realized real quick that Faith was starting to get there, but that Chasten really wasn't there yet. And I tried to egg him on. But then I was like, oh, dude, stop. I was like, this is perfect. This is the scene. This is what the scene needs, because this will paint Samuel as more of someone that isn't willing to stick up for not even himself, but someone that he loves. And so that whole scene was amazing. It was perfect. And so that's a beauty in some things. So that's a discovery I found, just rolling with the punches. If an actor isn't getting at the place you want them to get at, well, what's their demeanor right now? Would that work? Would it? If you really think about it, honestly, yeah, it would, character-wise, and that's what happened. So yeah, she was amazing. She's such a great actress. She that was her first short, and she studied acting before, and I was like, dude, I was blown away. She made it normal. She didn't make it over the top. She made it completely normal, and that's one thing that I really admired about her. The kissing scene that they did, that was my first one directing. That we did 3 takes, and that was really that was very professional. It was really professionally done for Faith, who had never been in a short, and for Chasten, who this was his first kissing scene, and it was really professional. He was very good. He did. Matthew McConaughey does this a lot, and I'd mentioned it to him too. But Chasten, he told her, he's like, okay, look, I'm gonna, I'm gonna like touch you here on the neck. I'm gonna, grab your hips. And the scene was like an implemented sex scene, so it needed to have that. But it was cool that Chasten what he did was he told her what he was going to do. So it wasn't just, he wasn't just doing things out of the blue. And so she was prepared. And her too, she was very professional. Their love really showed through the lens, and that's really, really what I wanted to portray. And I was so happy that, I've had some actors and actresses where they break and they start laughing because it's funny. And sure, it is a little bit silly, but after the 3rd, 4th, 5th take, it's like, yo, what you doing? But no, there was none of that. They did 3 takes. I think it was 15, 30 seconds tops each one, and we were done, and we moved on. It was very, very professional. Michelle McBride, she's a great actress. She's got a great look. She's really pretty, and she has that Margot Robbie type of feel. And so that's why, I wanted to cast her in this, and this being her first short, I was super pumped that she was willing to tackle something like this. When we first did the first couple of takes, I did a wide shot, and it wasn't as where I wanted it to be. Even with her, she said the same thing. She was just really, really nervous, and I totally understood. I told her, I'm like, Michelle, it's okay. And she was so sweet. She was apologetic. She felt so bad, and I was like, it's fine. I just reminded her, breathe. It's okay. If you want to stop, we can stop. But anytime I called to action, she was in it. She was ready to go. Even if she messed up on a line, or even if James messed up on a line, she continued. She kept going. She went through it. What helped was, from a director standpoint, was I was seeing this in the wide shot. I was like, okay, I could tell that she was nervous, and which I understood. And I was like, okay, instead of getting her footage next, her, close up, I'm going to move to James. So we did James's close up, and I think we did 3 or 4 takes. So that allowed her to do it like 8 more times. And then we took a break. Then we switched to her close up, and it was so amazing. I remember looking at it in the edit. Like, it was so, she portrayed it as she obviously got better each take. But every take, she had a little bit of nervousness. And that's what I loved. I was like, Michelle, I called her. I said, that was amazing. Because in and of itself, I wanted Lizzie to kind of portray that nervousness a little bit. She's seducing a guy. How often does she do this? Well, she does it a lot, but every time, it's a little nervous. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of butterflies in your stomach. And so it was perfect. She was amazing, even though it started off rocky, but every scene starts off like that. Every scene's a rehearsal scene. Take 1 is a rehearsal for take 2. take two is a rehearsal for take three, you know? And so she was impeccable. She really was. Yeah. Dre and Keanu, Dre was a camera operator for most of it. Almost all of it actually. And then Keanu was there. Keanu was really just, if anything, he was like the second AD. Dre was like first AD, and Keanu was like second AD. But it was awesome. They were great. We met them through Bella, and because they go to the same school, a lot of great things happened with them. You know, Dre was always willing to take the camera, and he was always willing to give up the camera to let me shoot. And a lot of that focus on that Suri lens is really tough sometimes, but he would nail it every single time. Keanu, same thing. They didn't complain. You know, they showed up, they did the work, they were fun, they liked being there, and you know, yeah, they were great. They were awesome. Playing Jordan was, I'm not gonna lie, it was fun. Everybody will say they always have fun playing the bad guy, and it's true, because the bad guy, you have so much freedom. You know, like, who wants to wake up and be the good, perfect role model? No one. We're human. And so I think, you know, playing the bad guy was a lot of fun. I never took it too far, you know, with things. I wanted to make him a bad guy, but I wanted to make him a lovable type of bad guy. It's like, man, he's saying a lot of this stuff, which is not really good. But it's like, but, you know, he's like, I don't know. He's like, yeah, I guess what he's saying makes sense. It's like when you watch Heath Ledger and the Joker, you know, I'm just ahead of the curve or something like the stuff that he says. You're like, wow, that is so messed up. But at the same time, you're like, that actually kind of makes a lot of sense. And so I wanted it to get across as, look, this is just a kid trying to survive. This is just a kid who wants his friend to do well. That's ultimately Jordan's motivation. I just want Samuel to do well. I want him to make money, and I want to help him do that. So what? He's got to kill some people, got to rob some people. Who doesn't do that in their life? You know what I mean? Samuel's robbed a couple people, you know? But there's a fine line between Samuel and Jordan, and that is murder. Obviously, stealing isn't good, but there's a fine line between stealing something and, you know, murdering, and that's something that Samuel couldn't grasp. That's something Samuel could grasp, but Jordan couldn't. Jordan just thought, dude, it's all the same. And it's really, you know, it is, but it really isn't. And so playing Jordan was really fun. The walk, the tone, just him not really caring. Jeff was amazing. His voice, he's got that Morgan Freeman. Actually, no, he reminded me of President Snow. Donald Sutherland. He was just, I wanted to use his voice. I didn't want to show Oswaldo. I just thought, you know what, his voice would be a little bit more empowering, in my opinion, just hearing his voice. And I got that because one day we shot Oswaldo scenes like within the last week of shooting. So we shot a ton of scenes where we would talk about Oswaldo, where we would mention him, and when me and, you know, Samuel and Jordan would argue about him, but I hadn't shown him yet because we hadn't shot the scene. And I was like, you know what? What if we just didn't show Oswaldo's face, you know? And so that's what we did. And Jeff, his voice, you don't even need to see his face. His voice says it all. So yeah. Go ahead and check it out. Please watch it. The story is great. I love, you know, the story that me and Chasten kind of came up with. You know, it's a story about right and wrong and deciding, what are you going to sacrifice? You're going to sacrifice your morals for money, or you're going to sacrifice money for your morals? And everybody has to make that decision in life. Everyone does. And hopefully, you know, we all make the right decision. So go ahead and check it out. It's a great short.